Episode 3 of Respect Her Game. I hope one day I get to say episode 300 or maybe even 3,000 one day, but it'll be a journey to get there. This week, really happy to be joined by Laura Stickells, who I've known for a couple years now. Laura, I don't remember how you reached out to me. I don't know if it was DM or you got my number from somewhere, or we met somewhere in an Essen building, but you shadowed me for a bit and we went for coffee to talk about the business, and here you are. So number one, congrats. And number two, you have quite the journey to share with fans, with young men, young women who want to do this. I get so many questions about how to get in, how to start, and you've had your journey. So we're going to go over that. We're also going to have Amanda Pelkey on the show, PWHL Boston player, right now in the middle of the Walter Cup run, flying to Minnesota, getting ready to play in game 3, tied 1-1 in the series. So we're going to get her take on what's going on, but also she's got her own business. Her and her wife are welcoming a child, lot to go over there. And let's start with this before we get into your life story. The WNBA announcing yet again another expansion. They're going to welcome a team next season in 2025 in the Bay Area. And now the first international WNBA team in Toronto, where I'm from. So really big news for me. I haven't even texted my friends about it, but I can't wait to get their take on that. And this supposedly is going to be a bit of a traveling team to showcase the WNBA all across Canada. But what are your thoughts on that, and just the fact that we're seeing female-based sports franchises and leagues obviously expanding? Big news.
Well, it's amazing. And it's so funny that you're from Toronto, because I was actually born in the Bay Area and went to college there. So it's both of our original hometowns, which is so exciting. But San Francisco and the Bay Area, it's such a great basketball town with the Golden State Warriors. And I just think, especially with the WNBA in particular, like, you look at all of the amazing talent coming out of college basketball, and every year so many of those players that do end up getting drafted never actually make the WNBA. They don't make their teams out of camp. And so there's so much talent that's just being left on the cutting room floor. And it's so exciting to see that there's going to be new franchises, so more opportunities for these great players to be showcased and continue to play professionally, and just more great competition too. I think, the more teams you have, the more intrigue as well. I think sometimes when leagues are smaller, there's only so many storylines, and when you start adding more teams, it's so much more interesting, and you get to showcase new cities too. So it's really exciting. I'm so excited.
Yeah, me too. And the fact that it should debut in 2 years, I mean, that's very quick. But we've seen how quickly the PWHL made things happen. There were so many moving parts, and yet they put together this league that was ready to go when a lot of people predicted. And even some people on the board were saying maybe we'll launch next year, but they got it all done. The thing with international play and travel, which is why I think this is such a big deal, there are so many logistical parts, like moving parts, very complicated. Travel, passports, border. I don't know anything. I'm probably going to butcher this, but something about taxes too. So there's something I know with in the NHL, players, playing in Canada are taxed differently than the US, and then there's all this stuff they have to make up for that. So the fact that the league was ready to take that on, the reason I bring that up is because it just adds so many complicated things. But the fact that they were ready to take that on really means that they are expanding. There is the interest. So I love hearing that Canada is now going to be involved. And why not? Because the women of Canada deserve to see a great product too, not just look to the States.
No, absolutely. And it's actually so funny that you mentioned taxes. When I guess, first of all, just looking too at the PWHL, of course, that is both in Canada and in the US. And just the fact that they were able to do that and do it so quickly shows that there is an avenue for it. But it was so funny. Cameron Brink, who is the number 2 overall draft pick this year in the WNBA, she was drafted by the Sparks, so she's playing in California. And there was a funny TikTok of her, I think it was yesterday or the day before, somebody said, like, what does growing up mean to you? And she was like, realizing that taxes suck. And yes. So it's so funny, those small things that you wouldn't even think about, like taxes do create so many issues when you're creating, I'm sure, a new league. Yeah, tons to think about, but so exciting at the end of the day. I'm sure they'll be able to get it done. 2026 feels like a long ways away. And we see, new franchises pop up all the time now in sports, whether it be like the NHL moving from Arizona to Utah. Like, things happen. When you put your mind to it, things can happen. So it's exciting to see people putting their mind to women's sports.
Absolutely, yes. And the advertising dollars will come. So congrats to the WNBA. And of course, as mentioned, Amanda Pelkey, PWHL Boston, is going to be joining us a little later on. But let's let the fans get to know you. Here's my favorite thing about having you on. And we've had Charlotte on before, or Annabelle, excuse me, on before. And it's the stories that I get DM'd or asked or stopped on the street all the time about how do I do it? What do I do? Can you give me any advice? And everyone's story is so unique and different, and that includes you. But what I want everyone in the industry or who wants to be in the industry to know, and when I go speak at places, I make this very clear. It's a grind. It's a real grind. And there are a lot of jobs in the world that it's a grind, and you don't go from, maybe in sales, like at the bottom to the top. You have to grind it out. But this one is no different. And your story involves like moving to different places and having 3 jobs at once and still kind of grinding at it. So tell us a little bit about when you started to realize you wanted to do this and what your first steps were.
It has been such a journey for me. Like going all the way back even to when I was in high school, when it first kind of like dawned on me. That's when I first started really getting into college football. I actually was in high school. That was the first sport that I really watched, and thinking, oh, like sideline reporting or hosting, that could be really cool. That might be something that I would be interested in. And then I ended up going to Stanford, which was an amazing education. And I'm so grateful for all of the time that I spent there, and I learned so much. But while I was there, I kind of got a little bit steered away from that, maybe. I was the managing editor of the sports section for the Stanford Daily for a while. So I was definitely interested in it, but just the classes that I was taking were much more business minded. I picked up a minor in data science. I majored in communication, but I was really thinking, okay, maybe I would be interested in like running a media company, not necessarily being sideline. And I think I fell for that, not necessarily because I was actually interested in it, but because people told me I should be interested in it. One thing I
Right.
heard a lot was, oh, you don't have to be the person that's on camera. You can be the person that's like running the company. And I was like, okay, that's supposed to be the thing that I should want to do, I guess.
Mhm.
But come to find out after graduating and after accepting a sports business job, I realized, actually, no, I do want to be in front of the camera, and I want to be telling the stories, and everything that I had been told for the past couple of years about you should want to be an executive is just not true for me. Like I do like to be on camera, and I do like to tell stories and have that pressure of being live. I think that's something too that I love, is just the pressure of being on live television. So I was actually working at Pac-12 Networks for a year after I graduated, and I kind of had this realization, I want to get back into creating content, whether that be written or on camera. I just want to take that step. And I applied randomly to this job in Alaska, Fairbanks, Alaska, at the Fairbanks Daily News Miner, writing for their local newspaper. And I applied for it, not really thinking much about it. And a month later, I'm interviewing for it. And then a month later, after that, I'm driving up the Alaskan Highway, and I'm covering high school sports, Division I college hockey, sled dog racing, local Alaskan sports. It was truly an incredible year. I will never forget it. I would have stayed longer, but the pandemic kind of interfered with that and ruined my plans a little bit. But it was so exciting, and there's so many great stories up there, and having the opportunity to tell those, and I think also just kind of become confident in myself as a sports writer and as like an authority in sports. I think one of the reasons as well why I was a little bit nervous at the beginning to go into sideline reporting or go into being on TV was I truly felt like I didn't know enough about sports. And looking
Right.
back, I realized like that's kind of crazy. Like I love sports. I watch a lot of sports. But I just didn't feel like I knew enough. And that's one thing too that I like to tell women who are considering this. I ask them, I'm like, do you feel like you know enough about sports to do this? Because I want them to know that they do. Like if you're interested in sports and you're passionate about it, you know enough, because everybody has to start somewhere. Like you don't start covering sports knowing everything. And even beyond that, like,
Right.
you don't need to be a sports encyclopedia to be able to do a good job and tell really great stories and be able to be a really great reporter. There's a lot that goes into this job. And so I think that's
Totally.
think that I really gained confidence with when I was in Fairbanks was kind of realizing, no, I can do this job. And I think also just being so far away from everybody that I knew gave me the opportunity to feel like I could mess up and not embarrass myself and just kind of figure out my own way. So that was amazing.
Yeah, I think the point of not having to be a sports encyclopedia is big. I definitely had that imposter syndrome where I'm like, I need to memorize every stat and like stay on top of it. And although, I've learned the hard way sometimes if I've ever been lazy in my like research, and that's happened when you in the, middle of a run and you're like, okay, I think I know everything, but I didn't do that extra mile where you're like, oh, I feel so dumb. I should have known that in the interview. I didn't, ask the question the right way or whatever. That happened earlier in my career. You obviously have to stay on top of everything, but the more important skills are because that research, can be made available to you, and it is like learning how to ask questions, learning how to listen, being creative in your question asking and seeing if you can get something different, building relationships, obviously practicing your delivery, your on-air stuff, being engaging, all those kind of things. And of course, having a passion as much as the fans do, because you want to think like them so that you're giving them the stories that they're thinking about. So you're right. The knowledge, I think, is a very big imposter syndrome thing for young women, especially coming into the industry. And that's, I think, a follow-up because a lot of them are tested and they still get tested, which sucks. Like I've talked to a lot of young girls in high school who tell their guy friends that they're interested in, X, Y, and Z. And they're like, oh yeah. And then they'll test them on like, who's the leading goal scorer for this team? And that's so unfortunate that still happens. It's good to know that, but if you don't worry about it. You could still do a good job, and make sure you have your research, make sure you have your stats and facts correct, but you don't have to be a walking encyclopedia. So good point there. And I just want to jump in and ask you then, you said it was an adventure in Alaska, but what were your day-to-day I'm sure it was different every day. You mentioned all the different things you covered, but can you give us some insight into that? And also, were you one of the only sports reporters there, or were you in a group of a couple of people?
So at the News Miner, so at the newspaper, there were two of us. There was the editor of the sports section, and there was me. And then the editor actually left at the end of my stint, so I was the only one. Wow. And then there was also there were the TV reporters there. So there were, I think, 2 or 3 reporters that were covering sports for the local TV station. So there was a small group of us that would always be at everything together. I was the only woman, which hasn't really changed, I guess, throughout my career. I feel like oftentimes I'm the only woman at a location. But yeah, there was a handful of us that would always be at the same places, and just day to day, it really was, like you said, it was different every single day. But during the week, I was, at the high school volleyball games or at the high school basketball games. And then on Friday or Saturday, I would be at University of Alaska Fairbanks covering their Division I hockey team, which was actually my first experience covering hockey. I had actually never watched a hockey game aside from maybe a couple of Stanley Cup finals until I moved to Alaska back in 2019, I think it was. So, and I've just been really immersed in it ever since. That's where I grew to love it. But I was also covering junior hockey up there. They have a NAHL team, which is actually a crazy environment. It's only like a 3,000, probably 4,000 seat arena, but sold out every single night. Wild atmosphere to watch a junior hockey game. That was incredible. And then the sled dog racing was probably the most amazing week that I spent there. I covered this 1,000-mile sled dog race, the Yukon Quest, which starts in Fairbanks and ends in Whitehorse, Yukon. And I would drive from checkpoint to checkpoint and talk to the mushers. And it was 40 below. It was freezing cold. You'd be bundled up outside talking to the mushers. And you couldn't use your phone or anything because it would die immediately in the cold. So you're like writing notes with pencil and paper because pens would freeze. So that was really cool. And just the stories that you would get from these mushers and how much they loved their dogs was amazing. So really every week was different. That's the case in basically any career, but just you're covering different stuff every single day. And I think one other story that I did, which was amazing, was the Midnight Sun baseball game. So in Alaska, it's sunny all throughout the day in the summer, and there's this baseball game that's played. It starts at 10 p.m. at night, and they play it around until, whenever the nine innings are over, which was usually around 1 a.m., and they play it with no lights except for the light of the sun, and it's beautiful. There's usually, you get some like rainbows in the background, like a sunset in the background. It's incredible. I've never seen anything like it, and I got to cover 2 midnight sun baseball games, so that was awesome. There's
That's
an
so
abundance of
cool.
stories up there.
Yeah, no, that's so unique. And what I've been thinking about as you're telling your stories for, again, like trying to push the message to people who want to get into this industry is that it's very beneficial to move away somewhere where you are one of the only ones, where you're not in this huge market, even though people might feel like, oh, that's a step down. I didn't have to do that. And I'm not going to say I regret it because I didn't I was in Toronto and just doors were opening up, but it was a lot harder actually to start in a bigger market. And I started right away with the NHL at 19 years old. I wasn't doing on air stuff. I wasn't even writing. I was essentially just in scrums, getting sound for a radio station that I was an intern. I wasn't even paid for a radio station that would use the sound for their morning radio show. So it was covering mostly the Toronto Maple Leafs and the visiting team that was there. So whoever they were playing, we'd get the clips. And they told me as like a 19-year-old, like, just if you want to ask questions, fine, but you don't have to. Like, just get the mic in there and get out and clip this for us. And I was like, wow, I'm 19 and I'm already covering the NHL. But it was actually, again, I don't want to say I regret it, but it was a very difficult place to learn because I was really intimidated being myself or asking questions the way I wanted to, because I just didn't. I was in this group of people who've been doing it for 10, 15, 20, 30 years. And I did make a lot of mistakes. And so I made my mistakes kind of on this big and large platform, which hurt me and my confidence at the beginning. It was difficult to, like, sometimes I'd ask a question and it was in my mind like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have asked that. Again, I'm like 19. I'm learning. I wasn't used to what it would be like, or I didn't know how to read certain stats, like find them in the stat sheet and stuff like that. And I was too afraid to ask. So although it looked like on the outside it was maybe a win that I was already starting in the NHL, and it ended up paying out because I made so many contacts so early on, I think it would have been better for my career if I had covered junior hockey or OHL hockey, which is even big up in Ontario, or high school teams, and really kind of cut my teeth that way and been free to create stories and ask questions the way I want, not the way I think I should, which is what I did with the NHL. So anyway, long way of saying to people watching, like, Laura's journey, I'm sure, and I want to follow up on that, like, you learned so many skills about being a reporter and a journalist and what to do, what not to do. Whereas for me, I felt like I spent the first 3 years being terrified of everyone, and all I was also the only woman, and all the older male men that I worried would judge me. And then you're making these mistakes, quote unquote, on a big platform. So move away. Don't be afraid to move away and make it your own. So you probably were able to do that, like really make this your own project.
Yes, I completely made it my own project, and also just like advocating for small markets. One thing that I thought about when I started this was, don't think of this as an adventure. I think that so many people think of it as like, I have to move to Nebraska or, the Midwest or Alaska or somewhere small. And no, it should be an adventure. It's supposed to be exciting. It's a journey. Your life is so long that there's so many different places that you should get to live. Just like a life story for yourself too. It's not just stories you're telling. It's a life story for yourself. And that's something that I was able to embrace, fortunately, when I was 22. I think when I was in college, that was something that actually I was scared of, was, oh man, like all of my friends are graduating and they're moving to San Francisco or New York, and I want to go there too because that's what everybody else is doing. But I think it took me a couple of years to reframe my mindset of, this is an adventure. You are going to get to have so many experiences in your life. And at least for me, moving to Alaska, who else gets to have the story of being 22 living in Alaska? So few people get to do that. And you should think of it that way, not as necessarily this thing that you have to go through. It should be exciting. So that's what I try to tell young women who are coming up through college when they ask me for advice. I'm like, don't and a lot of them do want to move to New York. I'm like, if that's what you want to do, that's great. We can hopefully talk about ways to make that work, but don't be afraid to take that local news job somewhere small, because there's so many great experiences that you're going to have there that your friends are never going to get to have.
Totally. And I do think it's better you're in less competition, probably less people down your throat, people judging you, and you can, like I said, make it your own. I feel like I could talk about that part of the industry for so long, and I have so many questions about the Alaskan journeys. I guess I'll ask you over a coffee, but we got the halfway wrap a while ago now, and you still have so much of your career. So let's skip like the in between, but tell us about what you do for the Woo Sox right now and what that coverage is like for you.
Yeah, so I currently am the sideline reporter for the Worcester Red Sox. This is my second season doing that. That's the Red Sox AAA team. And yeah, it's basically a lot of what Jemai Webster does for the Red Sox, I am doing down in Worcester. I don't travel with them, I just do their home games, but it's an incredible experience, and it's a great opportunity for me in my career because there's so many games that you just have that opportunity to do game after game after game. And that's something that you have to learn to do in and of itself. Like, not just do 10 games a season, you're doing 50 or whatever it is. So having the stamina to be able to do that is a learned skill I've learned.
For sure.
So that has been wonderful. But yeah, I think like my day-to-day for the Woo Sox, I drive down, try to get there before BP. I'm out there for BP. I'm going in the clubhouse and getting my stories for that game. Usually my prep actually starts the day before I go down there. I'm always seeing what's going on with the team to make sure I'm up to date.
Right.
And I have story ideas before I even go into BP. So I know the players I need to talk to, and I have an agenda for myself because BP is an hour, but it goes by quick. So if you miss somebody, you're out of luck that day for that story. So I always try to make sure I'm on top of it. And then, yeah, we talk to the manager before the game. Chad Tracy's the manager in Worcester. He's awesome. We always go in his office after BP, and we ask him all of our questions. If we have anything left over that I need to get, like, maybe I didn't get to talk to a player, I can ask Chad Tracy about that player instead.
Right.
So that's always kind of like my last resort option. But Trace is awesome. He's so nice to the media members down there. And especially when I started last year, like, I'm sure I was asking some stupid questions and he never made me feel stupid. So he's been so great. All the media down there have been awesome. And then when the broadcast starts, I'm on the field, I do my opening hit, and then I'm in the pit and I'm doing my hits from the first baseline and the photo pit there. And then after the game, if there's a Woo Sox win, I'm doing the post-game interview. So, yeah, it's very similar to, I'm sure, well, I know what Jemai does because I see what he does when I do the stage managing for the Red Sox. But, yeah, it's exactly like any big league job. You're just doing it in AAA.
And what's the PR, what's the access like to players? Because that's something, too, that might change. I don't know what AAA is like, but I know in the NHL, actually team to team, access is very different. They have rules about what they have to make available to media. But do you have to go through PR every time? Does PR trust you now? Because that's also important to build that relationship where you can just grab a guy whenever. What does that look like in terms of the access you have?
So that was the most interesting part for me when I started this job, because I'm coming from college hockey where there's SIDs who are kind of like the intermediary for you between the player and the reporter. And in AAA, there's just not that sort of infrastructure. You don't have all of those PR people. They literally don't exist. So, like, I am
Right.
PR. I'm the person that gets to decide whether or not I get to talk to the player. So there's nobody there telling me no. So sometimes I'll like check with the manager. I mean, honestly, I'm just like, hey, are you okay if I talk with this player right now?
Yes.
But yeah, I usually just walk up to whoever I need to talk to, and the locker room or the clubhouse rather, is always open before the game. So I just grab whoever I need, and I just have to use my own personal judgment. Sometimes it's like, because normally what the PR person would do, if, say, somebody has just gone through something like a unfortunate life event or are really struggling, like, you have to use good judgment. Like, is this a day to pull a player or not?
Right.
And, like, would a PR person make this player available to me normally on this day? That's something, too, that you have to kind of use your own judgment for, because I want to be a good person as well. Like, before being a reporter, I'm a human and I'm a person. So making sure you're
Yes.
treating everybody with that respect. But yeah, you're kind of your own PR person.
It's really important to make sure, especially if you're staying with a team for a long time, to build relationships and keep them. And I've had so many instances when I maybe could have broke a story earlier in my career, but I was like, I think this would go against what would make them feel okay. And I didn't ever want to be a breaking news journalist. I didn't want to be the one who's like, I'm going to get all the information first. I wanted to be a storyteller. And so that probably would have made me look good to be the first one to know something, but, had unwritten rules, or just like trust too that I built with a player, that I'm like, they trust me. That's why they're telling me this. I'm not going to go out and blow it. And again, some people might have been like, that's stupid. You could have made a big name for yourself. But in the end of the day, I feel like it's paid off. And now in the NHL, even players I don't know, they know from other people. They're like, oh, this is Soph. Like, you can trust her, or, she's not in it for herself to make a big name for herself. She's in it to tell a good story about you, which depends on what your goals are. I think that's very important. Also, Laura, we are getting the wrap, unfortunately, because we have Amanda Pelkey coming on. And so we definitely want to give her some time. They're in the middle of this run for the Walter Cup. But in like 2 minutes or less, can you tell us, because I want people to know that once you're in it, you're not automatically in, and then you have this like $1 million contract and it's like an easy ride. It's still a very hard ride for me in some ways as well, even though to people it may not look like it on the surface. But just tell us really quick about what you're still currently doing, because you're juggling a lot of different jobs.
Oh, I am fully grinding. Just because you're on TV
Yes.
does not mean that you're doing okay.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
no, but I'm fully grinding. So I do a lot of the game of the weeks for Hockey East on Nesson during the winter, and then obviously doing Woo Sox stuff. I stage manage at Nesson, so behind the scenes for the Red Sox and the Bruins. I'm in the booth with Jack Edwards and Andy Brickley for the Bruins, and then Dave O'Brien and whoever the analyst is for the Red Sox, making sure they have all of their promos or waters, whatever they need. So I stage manage for those broadcasts, and I nanny on the side to make some extra cash. So it's fully, we're working hard here, but one day I know I'm gonna get that next contract, and it's gonna pay off, and I'm gonna have all these wonderful stories to show for it, and I'm going to feel like I've definitely earned it. So that's
Yes.
sort of where I'm at right now.
Yes, no, she's definitely in the grind. The grind continues. So again, to everyone watching and listening who wants to do this one day, you got to have the passion that Laura has, and be prepared to take on a bunch of different jobs, or maybe move to Alaska. Laura, I hope we get to continue the conversation, dive a little deeper in the future. But thank you for being on episode 3 of Respect Her Game. Coming up next, we're going to welcome Amanda Pelkey to the show. We talked to her a little earlier. So, guys, have a listen to the interview. As promised, Amanda Pelkey joins us right now on Respect Her Game. I don't know how we keep landing all these big names in women's sports in the middle of their season, not just the season, in the middle of a finals and a championship run for the Walter Cup. You guys are playing a game on Friday against Minnesota. Series tied 1-1. So 1, welcome to the show and thank you for the time. But 2, what's the whirlwind been like with the travel, with the final, with the media coverage and everything? How are you soaking it all up?
It's been awesome. I think everybody on our team I think league wide, everyone's been super excited. The amount of support that we've gotten all year, and obviously to be in a place to be in the finals. The energy is exciting. Fans are excited. Both teams are trying to play our best hockey. So it's a great product right now.
I'm not sure if it mattered to you growing up, but I obviously read your bio and playing in Vermont and growing up there, and being kind of a New Englander. And I know you've represented Boston in other ways, but now with this PWHL league, what does it mean to you to be playing in Boston so close to home?
Yeah, I've had the privilege of playing in Boston in years past with different leagues. So it's kind of come full circle that I'm able to be back in Boston now playing, and I've always loved the city, close to family, right? Vermont's not too far away, so it's an easy drive on off days if I want to go back home and relax and rewind. And I think it is pretty funny that it's, now looking at where our league is now, and then I've landed back in Boston. It made me really happy and really excited for the opportunity.
And your wife is an assistant coach, if I have this right, at Harvard. Is that right?
Yep.
Yes. Okay, great. So you guys both, get to, you don't have to worry about the long distance travel. Did the jobs just line up that way? Did you guys, decide wherever I get the job, we're going to make it work? Or how did that, come to be that you're both in the same area?
Yeah, it was an interesting couple months, I would say, after the PHF was kind of taken over by this league. So, like many others that were involved in that situation, really on both sides, it was okay, well, what's next? And for us, we both had jobs lined up in that league. So we pretty much, a combination of being lucky and having different communication with setting up jobs and where we wanted to be, and we're very fortunate that we landed in the same location.
Awesome. One thing I like to stress to the viewers and the listeners, many of them want to be sports broadcasters, many of them want to be athletes, or are, and just kind of like getting stories, is just the work-life balance of it all. Especially you're in an inaugural season now. Obviously, it's gaining so much media attention, but there's still so much growth that can happen. One of the things that female athletes have to do is have two jobs. Still,
Hmm.
many of them.
Yep.
Obviously we're moving towards that changing, hopefully, but it makes me think of NHLers in the 40s and 50s when they had to work in the summer and skate. So hopefully we're there sooner than later. But that being said,
Yep.
you have your hockey camps, you have your own business. What is your work-life balance like for you? And you have a baby on the way, so congratulations. But what does that look
Yeah.
like for
Thank you.
you,
Thanks.
maybe day to day? Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've been fortunate that last year in the PHF and then this year with the PWHL, during the season, I'm just solely focusing on being an athlete and being the best athlete that I can be. So just also want to have, take recognition for all the leagues and people and athletes and staff that have gotten us to this point. But yeah, there's definitely still a mixed situation where once the league ends, there's players that, are going to continue training right away after a little break. And then there's players that are going to be going into their 9 to 5 job right when the season ends. So, there's always growth that we still want to keep promoting, but we're also fortunate of where we're at that, when we play during the season, it's what we can simply focus on, which has been amazing. And my summers are filled with my hockey camps that also bring me a lot of joy, and it's a lot of work. And I'm going to have a quick week transition between season ending and my first camp starting, so that's a little different, but I'm really looking forward to them as well.
When it comes to your camps, do you take care, like maybe it's grown since you started, maybe you're still kind of taking care of everything? Obviously there's an on ice portion, but there's business side, taxes, legalities, all these things. Are you still taking care of that, or do you have a team to help you with that?
I do, yeah. I do it all
Do
right
it all.
now. There has been, thought of getting help in that realm, but to be quite honest, I actually love that side of it. For some reason, I've always liked the organizational piece, and the hockey and the actual camp itself is the fun part. So for now, it's going okay. So we'll see where that leads.
Have you seen interest in young women and boys too? I know you have co-ed camps as well,
Mhm.
growing since you started. And then also, can you compare it to your childhood and the camps that you had? What's been the difference maker? I see on your page, I love that you're incorporating nutrition as well, and mindfulness and yoga, just not just hockey. So I love that kids
Mhm.
have access to all of that. But how have you seen that growth in terms of interest and access for kids?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I do love about my camps is they were pretty much inspired by my time with the national team. So we were pretty keen on keeping, journaling and having a notebook during my whole time there. So it's fun to look back on the things that we learned. And shortly after the Olympics, I pretty much took the template of everything that we were taught through the national team, put my own little spin on it, and put together a week long camp plan. And since then, I've tried to grow it throughout the United States. Each summer, I do different locations, and the biggest part for me is I love meeting new people. I love connecting with with the younger athletes and their families and making new connections. So when I look at it from a growth perspective and just how excited that so many young athletes are about women's hockey, boys and girls, it's like the icing on the cake for me at my camps.
That's awesome. You mentioned the Olympics. Obviously, we have to mention your gold medal winner with Team USA over Canada. And that's something that, growing up, I actually myself am a Canadian. So I always grew up with the Canada US rivalry. And it was really just Canada US, Canada US. Your wife from Finland. I'm curious to know if you feel like the game for women is growing in Europe as someone who maybe has a little bit more boots on the ground or information there, because it does feel
Yep.
like it's going to be Canada versus the US, but is there going to be more competition coming up?
Absolutely. I think it's already started. I've been a huge supporter, and I think the style of European hockey altogether is super skilled. I mean, you look at Czech, you look at Finland, you look at Sweden. I think that they're knocking on the doorstep, and I don't even know if knocking it on the door knocking on the doorstep is what it calls, because I think they're right there, and it's exciting for our game. Obviously, being an American, I'm still supportive of them, but it is fun that my wife, plays for Team Finland, what did play for Team Finland. So there's another country to root for and their development, and it's been really fun to watch.
I love that. I love hearing that because it's just nice that the game is growing and that other countries are, getting involved, and that opens up the competition, even though Canada US will always be the greatest rivalry, I think, for years to come still. But good to know that, other countries on the women's side are growing the game. Obviously, we have to talk about
Yep.
what's going on right now in the postseason, and just I'm sure
Yep.
you don't want to / it's probably hard to reflect on, the season that was, because one, you're in the middle of this run, and two, it takes time to kind of look back. But have you had moments yet where maybe, crowd or people stopping you where you're like, wow, this is unbelievable? And if so, what if some of those moments that stood out, what have they been?
Yeah, there's been a few moments. I think specifically, I would say our playoff series against Montreal was like, it was incredible. I mean, their fan base, I think their fan base has been an accumulation of many years of different leagues, and um, it's cool to see how much they showed up in the playoff series. It was really fun to play in front of that crowd. It's always fun to be booed. It's always fun to silence an arena as well, and it just creates a little bit more competition. And I think a lot of people had, we've had chills, goosebumps throughout the season where you're skating out and seeing the result that this league has really promoted, and seeing it in real time. And it's also really, really cool to have young boys be just as excited and wanting to come to our games and watch our games, and the types of messages that I get of people just being really excited and really entertained. Like, they're completely entertained watching just on TV, and it's awesome that it's super accessible on YouTube. And there's just been so much good energy about this year, and I think once the season ends, I'm sure all of us will definitely be reflecting on the progress that we made as a whole.
Yeah, no, I love that you mentioned young boys as well. I think, I'm thinking of myself as a fan in the past. I think we used to be like, well, girls like women's hockey, but it's like, no, guys like it too. And we
Hmm.
just have to get that promotion out there and get that access and pay the players and, make it easier for them to
Yep.
do this. So it's been so nice to watch it grow. I'm going to look at my notes because I want to get the name right, but the Sports
Yep.
Business Journal awarded you guys the Sports Breakthrough of the Year award going to the PWHL League. Is it something you guys discussed as a team? And also just knowing that there's so many different awards, different aspects. You guys, from what I understand, from a little bit of insight, there was a chance that maybe the start of this league would be delayed one more year. That's kind of what I heard, that it was
Mm.
like, okay, can we get this done? But people put their minds
Yep.
together and their resources, and they're like, no, we're doing it this year. And the result has been sellout crowds, record after record being broken. So just as someone who's been part of that, what does that award kind of mean to you, and knowing that the league earned that?
It's pretty cool. We haven't, as a team collectively talked about it, but I did just see it online. I was reading about it. I don't know if it was either yesterday or today. And like I've said previously, it's an accumulation of many years and many people, many women playing before us, staff members, investors that got us to this point. And I think it's even more cool what they've been able to pull off in the amount of time that they were given. And I think kudos to a lot of athletes that, got us to this point, and kudos to the athletes that are the product now. And I think it's only going to get better.
Do you ever walk around Boston or wherever you're traveling and see PWHL merch? Because I obviously living in Boston, I walk around and I see it on people and I love
Yeah.
that. Do you ever catch that?
Yep. I've seen it. Talked to a few people in coffee shops. If I'm wearing, I think I for some reason still had my like warm up crew neck on the other day when I walked into a coffee shop, and a young family came over to me and said, "Oh my gosh, have you been watching them?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm actually, I'm on it. I'm on the team. I'm gonna be heading to my game soon." And they were just like, they were ecstatic. They're, the support that we've gotten and the excitement that is across the city has been pretty cool. I think in all cities, quite honestly, all host cities has been
I
awesome.
love that. I love that. I'm sure they were so happy you took the time to talk to them.
Yep.
Hockey players, athletes, men and women, I always find are among the most humble. So I love that. I'm sure you made their day. I have a couple more for you, and then we'll let you go because I know you're getting ready with your
Okay.
team. I have to ask you a hockey question, obviously. What have you noticed about Minnesota? What are the keys to kind of get the win and get the championship?
Uh, they're fast. They're gonna want to play fast. Most of us have played for that head coach before, and he loves a fast style of play. So, for us, we're trying to slow them down, keep them from getting to the middle of the ice. But I think it's going to be a good set of games here in Minnesota coming up.
Yeah, I'm excited for the crowds as well. Obviously, best of
Yeah.
luck. And then this one, we keep calling PWHL Boston. What we're saying, PWHL Boston, PWHL Minnesota. Team names are coming out next year. I'm so curious. How much of a say do you guys have? Is this like a general managers? Is this founders of the league? How much of a
I have
say do
no
the players
idea.
have? Okay.
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe our leadership group is going to have some sort of say in it. I'm excited to figure out what it is. I don't know, the protocol of making that, but it's just going to make the league that much better and that much more exciting. I know people and fans are curious as well, along with us players, of what the franchises names are going to be. It's going to be pretty cool to find out.
Yeah, I can't wait to get the names.
Do you
And I
have any
guess lastly,
guesses?
well, I heard that it might be something along with like the Wicked for Boston
Yep.
because they,
Yep.
they always say Wicked Awesome or Wicked this, and that's what I heard. But that was like months ago. Someone could have made that up. I don't even know. But I'm dying to like. I like the PWHL jersey that just says PWHL Boston, but I can't wait to get like the names, or I don't know if there's going
Yeah,
to
it'll
be
be cool.
logos. Like, yeah,
Yeah, I think the Wicked. I think there was a set of names aligned for potentially this year. I don't know if they were just rumors or not, but Wicked was on the list, and I think that they just wanted to stick to city names for this year. And yeah, who knows? It's brewing. It's going to be exciting. And then you get the
well, that's what
merchandise, and you get people wearing the jerseys and the whole shebang, and it's going to be cool. I'm
a
very
hundred
curious.
percent. That's kind of what I love about this too. It's like it's in real time. We're witnessing a league develop, and we're watching
Hmm.
it grow in real time while it's building success. Like the fact that team names aren't even
Yeah.
established. There's a whole new slate of merch that's going to happen. Maybe rebranding for logos, but the first season was still so successful. I think that part is so
Yeah.
cool, and it's an example to other leagues, other teams, other businesses of how you can find success while you're still figuring things out, right?
Hmm. Yeah, and I think the jerseys across the board, even, without team names, I think did really well. I heard
Yeah.
that, they were selling out pretty quickly. So it's cool. Fans just want to be a part of it. They want to also be a part of the growth. They're much as involved as we are. We need them, they need us. And I think everyone's really excited and looking forward to what the next years are going to bring us.
What would you say without like I want to spin this in a positive way, but what would you say you'd want to see more of next year? Is it more media coverage in the room, a
Hmm.
more sponsorship? Like, is there anything where you're like, hey, this area of the game could grow? And I know you're not involved in the business side. Obviously, you're worried about your play and the team's play. But is there
Yeah,
anything that you're like, if we had more of this as a league, this would be good? Maybe support from
I
the
can
other leagues or
honest
something? Yeah.
yeah, I can honestly say that if I had to fill out a survey right this second, I don't know how much feedback I would give, because I think, from the professionalism of how much staff we have, the support that we have, having security guards walk us up to our families, like to the smallest details, I think they've done a great job of nailing them down, quite honestly. I would have to think a little further about that question, but on the surface, for a first year of a league kicking off, this was, I would say, the most professional year of hockey that I've had collectively in my career.
Wow. And you know what? Then
Yeah.
that's the answer. And that's great. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? That's so good to
Yeah.
hear that even in any company, maybe things can get better, but that there's nothing glaringly obvious that you're like, wow, we're really,
Yeah.
missing this or this would be helpful. So that is awesome to hear. And
Yeah.
I'm just so proud to be even witnessing, even I have nothing to do with it, but witnessing this era of sports. I don't know if you heard, but the WNBA just announced an expansion team in Toronto as
So
well.
cool.
So
Yeah.
international.
So
So
cool.
cool. Yes. Yes.
Yep.
I'm so pumped and it's time.
Yeah. Well, I do just want to say you are a part of it. You're doing your part right now, and getting the word out. So thank you to you, and thank you to Nesson. And this is what keeps our league going as well, is having stuff like this to promote our league and hearing people's stories. So just wanted to say thanks as well.
Thank you. Hockey players, like you guys are the
Yeah.
best, the most humble ever. But thank you. We'll end on that then. Let you get rest and get
Mhm.
ready for the big game. Good luck in the run for the Walter
Thank you.
Cup. We hope you come back to Boston, obviously, with the championship. And if not,
That is the
still such a
plan.
successful
Yep.
season. That is the plan. Exactly.
That's the
Exactly.
plan. Yep. Got to bring it back.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah. Thank you.